So we're back already. I just paused that for a second and now I've started it over. And so here's Dinosaur Wrathia. She's actually looking pretty cool. I'm looking at this through the viewfinder and I like what I'm seeing now. So let me put my phone back in its little pocket. Okay, so next phase, still got my same Sharpie. I'm going to start highlighting lines that I want to stand out. And usually I just do this with the characters. I don't really like to put in outlines for objects because I want the characters to stand out. This is the part where things really slow down. Putting some depth on Wrathia's nice chompy teeth. Kind of want her mouth to stand out. That's sort of the most forward part of her right now. So this is kind of an inking style that is sort of new to me, but I've really enjoyed the results so far, so I've been trying to incorporate it more into what I do. So right now I'm kind of just adding some thick lines in different places that I am going to make pop out a little bit more later in the next step. I outline her ear, and I'm going to darken her nose in her ear hole. Make these horns pop out a bit more. This part is actually kind of tricky because I can't usually see where my line is going. I kind of have to guess and then stop and then keep guessing. And this is the part, like, you know, if I screw up on little details, I will just drive myself nuts because I messed up on something tiny. You know, where it's like a big mistake, I'm kind of all like, oh, whatever, nobody's gonna notice. But if it's a tiny detail, I do that paranoid artist thing. You're like, oh, they're gonna notice that I put this one insignificant line in like a shadow. They're gonna notice. And they're gonna hate me for it. So that's kind of where you have to just tell your inner critic to just shut up. It's kind of like it's like stage performing. You know, if you don't, if you make your mistakes loudly, no one's gonna know that you didn't do that on purpose. Highlight the line in her neck. Some feather highlights. Let's see, what next? I'm gonna leave her torque on the highlighted toque. I forget what those things are called. It's like the Egyptian necklace. And I want her arms to be distinct from her hair, or her feathery mane. So I'm outlining those a bit. Oops. And I just try to embolden some lines I don't actually want to make bolder. It happens. And there's my roommate brushing her teeth. Outlining the arms some more. And some feather outlines. Floof floof. Wrathia is a fluffy dinosaur. Alright. I think I've got some of the outlines sticking out well enough. I might make her shoulder a little bit thicker. It's easier to see. That's better. Okay, so you see she's starting to pop out a little bit more doing it this way. always worry I'm gonna break my Sharpies that way, just like explode ink all over whatever I'm working for and in my shirt and stuff, because I'm paranoid that way. So this is a 0.01 micron. I go through these like you wouldn't believe. They are pretty easy for a person like me to mangle, and I try not to. So what I'm doing right now is a technique called hatching, where I'm just adding some depth by just putting in a whole bunch of tiny lines in this smoke. Lots and lots of tiny lines. Happy little lines. Bob Ross, I am not. That man was amazing. I hope you guys have watched some Bob Ross. He's really mellow and soothing. He's a really cool guy. Add a bit of shine to the pipe and also a bit of shadow. Because of the way my vision works, I actually don't really understand light and shadow, so a lot of what I do, and I've taken art classes and stuff, and just no amount of teaching seems to get it through to me. So my goal with most of my work is to just make things stand out so that I can see them almost more than anything else. And it's sort of led to a style of necessity. So what I'm doing right now is blending these thick lines in so they don't just end in ugly little square blotches of ink. They kind of taper off. It's sort of a, I guess it's sort of a brush pen look. And I can't use brush pens because you can see how close I am to the paper, and a brush pen kind of requires that you draw from the shoulder or from the elbow, and I strictly must draw from the wrist because of the positioning I'm in. So some of these lines are looking kind of manky. They bother me. I'm going to add some fluff and extra lines to her arm feathers. And there we go. And start adding a little bit of shading in her fingers to make those stand out. Kind of going with the contour of her scales, even though I don't, well, maybe I will give them all a little bit of shadow because I like that effect. And again, I'm just doing this little hatching style to bring different parts into more focus. So there's her hand. There's more on the pipe I can do. It's really easy to add shine this way. You just add a couple lines and suddenly you have like sparkle shine. Bringing out little details around Wrathia's arms. Now the great thing about these pens is that they dry really fast, which is good because I kind of put my finger, my pinky finger is like right on the page, which is probably not good. But it's just how I hold my pens. So it happens, and as long as you don't press down really hard, you're not really going to have a problem. So both Sharpies and Microns dry really fast, and that's great. And I basically taper off my Sharpie lines and do my hatching at the same time. Sometimes when I want to, make a little bit darker hatching, I kind of don't lift the pen up, I sort of just zigzag really close to each other like I'm doing here. I guess I can get this part of her feathers. And this is again sort of a technique I've started doing fairly recently, so it's kind of hit or miss. Do the shine on her toque. Toque. I'm an adult. I kind of like doing these little shine lines. I think they're really fun just because they're so tiny, but they make such a big difference to the overall piece. You can really add some depth by just adding a little bit of curve to your lines. You can get sort of the fluff effect by adding just a few more jiggly lines. Here's some more hatching. Fill in that. Now I'm going to do a little bit of cross hatching to make the back of her mouth darker. There we go. Give that tongue some depth. And just like with the toque, I add a little bit of shine to the teeth because teeth are always wet. They have spit on them. And there we go, her face is starting to come out. And my dog has sort of awakened, he's wiggling. Going to connect some of these scales to this thicker Sharpie line. Let's see, what part do I want to work on next? Do that muscle in the neck. And sometimes it's really hard for me to tell like what I want to do with the piece because I'm so close into it. It's really hard to see, you know, where it's going. And so highlight for the jawline. Part where I clean up the eyes is also one of my favorite parts because it's kind of funny, for someone who can't see eyes, I find that they are among the most important things to get right when you do character faces because the eyes are so expressive. But I literally would not know anything about eyes were it not for all the cartoons I watched as a kid. Because you do not want me to get close enough to see your eyes. It is a huge violation of personal space. Draw some lines to represent the iris. And some shading for that cheek. And darkening under those glowering brows. shine on the crown. And her horns are going to get a little bit of shine because they look like they should have some shine to them. Fluff out those tiny, tiny ear flaps. Horn sparkles. They're not really sparkles. I just realized it'd be kind of funny if this species, like, they have to shine their horns. I bet they do, because bone isn't naturally all that shiny. You kind of have to polish it. So maybe that's part of Wrathia's daily routine. A bit of horn shining, and Pedri too. What? I think Pedri had horns. It's been so long since I looked at the guy. I don't remember. Do a little bit of shading under the crown. You can tell that it has more depth, that it's like sitting on top of the head instead of being a part of it. Hatching on the horns. I've been slightly distracted by her shoulder plate, which I don't actually know if it's supposed to be, if that's cloth or what. Well, I'll just put shinies on it, because it looked like it was sort of a thing that glows in the dark, and when you're working with inks, kind of got limitations. I do not get to be one of the Ava's Demon fan artists that works with all that wonderful color. And I think the folks who do the colored stuff, I've always been in awe of colorists. I did it for a while, but there was a point where it just hurt my hands too much, because you see the way I have to ink, I had to color the same way, and I was using markers, and I was doing it for like 8 hours at a time, and it hurt so bad. So I would injure myself so badly that I couldn't draw for several days. So eventually I just had to give up coloring and really work on specializing as a line artist and coming up with creative workarounds for not being able to do fancy colors. But the people who are colorists are pretty phenomenal to me, because that's a lot of patience. Like, I can get this ink work done, you know, in like an hour or two. Well, you've been watching this whole video. It doesn't take that long. At least not for me, because I've been doing this forever. But, you know, colorists, they take much longer on the whole, and they do such amazing stuff I just can't even understand. So props to you guys. Just kind of adding fluff to Wrathia's crazy feather mane. And this is always the part that I kind of don't like, because it's this big wide open space. So doing stuff like this, I'm never sure if I get it quite right. I'm gonna smooth out some lines I can see with my insane magnification. That, as far as I know, it just makes my vision about as good as yours. I've been blind my whole life, so I don't know what y'all's magical two eyes are like. With your fancy depth perception, you kids and your depth perception. Getting close to the end of this cleanup process, which is nice. I always like this part. Do a little bit of mane fluff here to help that arm stand out. I'm not working this micron to death. I might be. Usually, I basically work my microns so hard because I use them so much that I actually crush the nib. For those who don't know, the nib is the tiny part of any pen where the ink comes out. I always thought that was a great word. But yeah, I will use my micron so much that I crush the nibs. It's looking pretty good. I feel like there's more I want to do with it, but I don't know what. I'm going to add a few tiny scales on her face with this 0.01 micron. And a point, there is a smaller micron than a 0.01. It's the 0.005, which is, I think that means like millimeters, or yeah, I guess it must be millimeters. So these nibs get small. So the 0.08 is one of the larger nibs, which I use to put in all the big fat details. And this 0.01 is one of the smallest. I try not to break out the 0.005 because then I go nuts on the details. And I find myself doing insane things like drawing every blade of grass. And I don't like to torture myself like that. Just adding these tiny scales around in between bigger scales. Just helps give Wrathia here a little bit more texture, I think. Or I'm just being fiddly. Sometimes I can't stop. And I just like to do these tiny, tiny, crazy details. I have done worse though. I used to draw like every scale on a dragon. Every once in a great while, I feel like torturing myself for 2 or 3 days. It's just sometimes how long it takes to do that kind of thing. I think one time I got really caught up in the details and I spent more time like drawing every blade of grass in this one piece of art, and I didn't pay that much attention to the character. So the character who's supposed to be the focus of the piece looked like ass, but that grass was amazing, you guys. I still love that grass. I saved that piece just because of the grass. So this is the kind of insanity you get with artists. So if you think you really want to be an artist, maybe double check that. Just see how crazy you actually want to be. And I confess I've been fighting not to badly sing this song, but I think I've been torturing you enough with my aimless blather. I don't want to make your ears bleed. Oh, and in all this little detail fiddling, I see a patch of mane that I almost forgot. So sometimes at fiddling, it's just me realizing that I've missed something, and I will fiddle with the piece until I find the thing I missed. I'm almost done with all these little scales, and I'm basically just drawing little circle-y shapes and dots in between the bigger scales. Pretty sure if her skin was really like this, she would have a problem. Get in there. Let's see, I think that's all I can really do. Ah, that's looking pretty good. Oh, but I see something that's bugging me. I want to make her stand out a little bit more on this side. Fluffy, fluffy dinosaur mane. Fluff, fluff, fluff. Usually I'm really quiet when I do art, guys, so it's kind of weird thinking of things to say. I'm sure this is the kind of crap my brain throws at me when I'm drawing. And now you get to hear it out loud. And a tiny, do a little bit more to these eyes. That's better. nice shine there. Okay. Now, so you see all the stuff I did, and you're like, but wait, Raz, where are all those other lines that you had before in all the black? And I'm about to add those in using my Jelly Roll gel pen, which I got at Michael's, and I love it. I don't know how I lived without it. This is great for fixing the occasional error and for adding some nice shine to metallic objects. And of course, if you screw up with your white gel pen, you can always ink back over it with the black. There we go, put some wet in her eye. Even though technically she's like made out of lava, so who knows. So the cool thing about using the Sharpies is that if I angle this paper just the right way, I can see my 0.08 micron lines from before. It's kind of tricky, it doesn't always work, but on the whole, this is a really good technique for me. I want to give it a try someday. Of course, there I was just saying it doesn't always work, and I just lost. There's the place I was looking for. Okay, so we got that. Add in some cloth lines. Where'd your boob lines go, Wrathia? There we are. There, she's starting to look better. And my last touch is just a little bit of sort of reverse hatching that goes opposite to the hatching I did before. And likewise with the hatching, it's not so much about the light for me, it's just about making these parts stand out more. Also, I can use this white gel pen to get rid of tiny, tiny imperfections that drive me crazy. I'm gonna make her shoulder plate pad thing, her shoulder pad of power. It's gonna be shiny. Since I made the little crystal thinguses in it, or whatever those are, I made those shiny. A little bit of shine on the arm wrappings, or highlight, I guess. And it's looking pretty done to me. So there we have Dinosaur Wrathia, and I will scan this and post it on Tumblr and DeviantArt. And I hope you guys enjoyed watching a blind person draw a magical alien dinosaur galactic empress who is also a pothead. So, yes. It's a good times. And apparently I was doing my Bob Ross impression. So thank you guys, and I hope you enjoyed that.